grieving. Some families will be lost to one another forever. To those of you who face the difficulties of reconnecting with family and establishing ongoing relationships, we say sorry. We offer this apology in the hope that it will assist your healing and in order to shine a light on a dark period of our nation's history. To those who have fought for the truth to be heard, we hear you now.
You're listening to Adopt Perspective, a podcast for anyone affected by adoption. I'm one of your hosts, Jo Sparrow. This podcast is a production of Jigsaw Queensland Post-Adoption Support Service. However, the views expressed are those of the people participating, not necessarily Jigsaw Queensland. The podcast discusses adult themes and listener discretion is advised. Hi everyone, welcome to Adopt Perspective. I'm your host, Jo Sparrow. Welcome to Season 5. I hope everyone managed a relaxing break over Christmas and the shift back into the new year wasn't too bumpy. Just a little news and a big thank you before we begin today's episode. Thanks to our courageous guests and wonderful listeners, the podcast grew exponentially last year, reaching 30,000 listeners in 45 countries. The podcast is required listening as part of the induction process in a relevant department of at least one state in Australia. It's been used in Churchill Fellowship research into Australia's forced adoption response and was brought up in discussions with Scottish Government officials in the lead up to their own recent apology. Over the years, we've heard from lawyers, policymakers, and others involved in inquiries and reference groups who've shared that they listen to the podcast to widen their own understanding and have used them to inform their reports and recommendations. I share this information only to let our guests know that they have had an impact and they've made a difference. So now it's time to get into the new season. Today's guest was born and adopted in Brisbane in 1985. James Vasilic has an incredible story and experience to share with us. And I think instead of going into the usual longer introduction, we might just jump right in. Welcome to Adopt Perspective, James. I am so happy to have you join us today.
Thanks. Great. Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me on.
James, could I start by asking you to share with us what it was like for you to grow up adopted?
Yeah, sure. So growing up adopted for me was, I guess, you have nothing else to compare your experience to. So it was a normal experience. I got raised by lovely parents. Unfortunately, my mother, she couldn't have children. And so I have two adopted siblings and two fostered siblings. And so my adopted parents, or my parents as I call them, were foster carers as well. And they just kind of, as soon as I came to their house, they had put trust accounts aside for me and my brother so we could go to a nice school. And their, I guess, outlook was to give us as many opportunities as they could give us, because they didn't know what we would excel in or not excel in. So it was about exposing us to many things and giving us the most opportunities to prosper. And then hopefully some of those things we would be passionate or interested in and follow those through. So yeah, I had a really good upbringing. But I guess, yeah, with any adopted person comes some challenges. Even if you have the perfect family and the perfect upbringing, you're still going to encounter some challenges. So yeah, they did, they came and I feel like I met those challenges, but yeah, I had an excellent upbringing and excellent family support and excellent education, excellent healthcare, all those things. So I was very lucky.
Mm-hmm. Your experience, because you're born in 1985, it was quite different to what mine was. And I do have some relatives who were adopted closer to the year that you were. And I know that one of them received like a little booklet about himself with some information in it about himself. I just wonder, what information were you given and how did you discover that you were adopted?
Yeah, so from basically whenever my memory came into to working, I always knew I was adopted, and I have an older brother who's a few years older than me. So we always knew we were adopted from like whenever we could remember. And so yes, we did get a little booklet. Um, it was kind of a once you get the if you go and get the full transcript from or full freedom of information request from Department of the relevant department, it does I guess highlight some of the positive features in those long documents.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I got that document, and it said my mom loved reading and she liked, just being by herself and like swimming, um and she was from, so in her case she was from Yugoslavia, so from a different country. And then when I was growing up, I followed a lot of sports, so my parents highlighted people from that region and said, look, that's where your birth mother's from, like. And so I had a particular interest in those kind of sports people.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, my dad has a big cabinet because he likes to keep all paper files, and yeah, the booklet's still in there. So that's something, yeah, that I kind of, yeah, looked at, and then yeah, it was kind of like some kind of connection or parallel to
Mm.
how I was. But yeah, so yeah, that's something that yeah, we were given. So
Yeah. Did you find yourself going back to it at all to sort of muse over things, or did you kind of read it once and that
yeah,
was it? Yeah.
I mean, there were times, where I would tell my parents I wanted to run away, and my birth mom would be, she loves swimming and all these things, and she would have like a great big property with a tennis court, and all these
Mm-hmm.
kind of delusions, I guess, maybe. But
Fantasies.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know any different, and I didn't know I didn't know what was happening for her.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but my parents were very understanding, and being foster carers, they understood that some people who are adopted, and a lot of people in foster care, they suffer a significant trauma or something, or multiple traumas at the start of their life, and that's the most important part of development.
Mm-hmm.
So they were very understanding, probably too understanding, to put up with me, but thankful they did.
Another thing that was very different in your experience to mine is that I grew up in a family with three siblings who were biologically related to my parents. So I was the only adopted person and the youngest. So I was sort of coming into their culture with lots of difference, where they were all the same. But you said you had an adopted sibling and fostered siblings as well.
Yeah,
How did that impact you, do you think, your experience?
I think it impacted my experience because, I'm not sure who my brother's parents were. My older brother, I have a younger sister who we adopted. My parents adopted after she was in state care for until she was 18. So that was kind of unexpected. And then my foster brother and sister, they're biological brothers and sisters. So I think it impacted me. They were all, I'm fairly sure, they all come from a similar ethnic background, I guess. Me coming from, with my mom was actually adopted herself as
Mm-hmm.
well. So she's adopted from her relatives. So she was adopted as well. So she found out that she was adopted when she was 14, and then hence things kind of without kind of being told by her parents. So things unraveled in her life as a result of that secret.
Are we
So
talking about your biological mother here, just to be clear?
correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes. Sorry
So
to
she
answer.
came from Yugoslavia. So I think the genetic makeup, there's a book that I read that, you know, um, there's nature versus nurture. and I do feel like nature has a strong impact on things. So I guess my temperament and the way I go about things is maybe different based on my genetic makeup, and just all being everyone in the family being different makeup, and some being similar to my parents or family, and some being a lot different. And so yeah, it's been that was a bit of a challenge to overcome, I guess. Trying to fit in and be my fit in and be professional and like personable and like a nice person, but also not like changing myself to be someone completely different to who I really am. So there's always that kind of push and pull element.
Yeah, for sure. So what led you to search for your mother?
Yeah, so I'm from Brisbane originally, grown up here most of my life, and I lived in Sydney for a few years. So I was in Sydney for a few years, and I had like a traumatic event. I had a workplace robbery where I was kind of seriously like held up, gunpoint and things like that. So that kind of maybe spiraled me down to maybe just thinking about, I guess, basics and who I am, and just because when you experience something kind of like life and death like that, you kind of reflect on your own life and existence. And I always wanted to meet my birth mum. So when I was in Sydney, I applied for the information. I wanted to really see if I had any siblings, and I knew she was from European area, so I had maybe conscious like materialistic I guess incentives like brother and sister, like citizenship in another country. But I also think subconsciously I obviously wanted to meet her. So yeah, I requested the information, and then I got it sent to me about 4 to 6 months later. They did send me like a disclaimer, like that before they sent me the information. And on top of this, I hadn't told anyone I was requesting the information. So I hadn't told my parents or any of my family. It was just something off the top of that I just did on my own accord, because I didn't really want to upset anyone. Like, I didn't want to upset anyone until I had to, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I received that information, and from there, I moved back to Brisbane, and then from there, I checked. Basically, I went through a whole search, which a lot of adoptees probably know of. You go to birth deaths and marriages, see if the person's alive, by putting in like a death certificate request, and if that gets denied, they're alive. And the kind lady at birth deaths and marriages kind of gave me that information. And yeah, from there I went to the lecturer role, found her details. Her first name was not common. And then it's probably like 6 to 12 months period, like found the address, went to the address. You want to check the mail. We see if you can check the mail to see if the person is at that address, because you don't want to knock on the door. Yeah, so that's what I did for that period of time, and I was able to knock on the door. Unexpectedly, I didn't think I would get that far, but I was just in the moment. But she didn't open the door, and I asked her who she was, and she told me her name. So that confirmed that she was.
This is through alive. The door you were asking.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So
right. Yes.
There's top she was living in housing commission. So there's although these doors are in every houses, so there's you can hear through the door. So because I guess she had a difficult life, and she was living in, you don't know who's going to knock on your door. She didn't answer it, and I wasn't really prepared. I hadn't prepared myself for getting that far, so it kind of had a stalemate. But she did tell me who she was, and then I just kind of made up some story. Sorry, I've got the wrong apartment. But yeah, that was a confirmation that she was in Brisbane, and I could potentially, if I really wanted to, find her and try and have some kind of relationship with her. So yeah.
Yeah. Wow, it's a lot. Now, I know you didn't at that stage hadn't told your family, so I just wanted to check a couple of things, like how old were you at this time, and did you have any support at all? Had you told anybody?
Um, I think I told one or two friends that I'd knocked on the door, but to me, like I hadn't. My adoption really wasn't important, as important when I was younger, so I didn't really tell a lot of people. Also in school, um, we like I didn't tell anyone either. Although me and my brother didn't look anything like my mum and my dad,
Mm-hmm.
and there were always questions like, "Oh, you look like," people were saying, "Oh, you look like your brother," and we obviously knew that that was not the case.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so there was really no support, but I had done a lot of research myself, and I mentally prepared myself for. So I wanted to mentally prepare myself for the situation because I knew it wouldn't be easy based on, I guess, um, my parents look after lots of children in care,
Mm-hmm.
foster children, and also through my mum also looked after babies who were adopted in the first 1 to 6 months before they were adopted out.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a lot of experiences with, or a lot of knowledge about what happens with the mothers between that period where they have agreed to adopt their child, but they still have that legal period where they can make can confirm their decision or make a different decision. So
Yeah.
um, I was pretty prepared, and also, yeah, at the same time, I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. If it was going to like flame out and not be great, I didn't want
Mm.
to. That would be on me. I didn't want to involve anyone else.
Yeah.
Um, I only wanted to involve people once I knew it could be a reality, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just, if you don't mind me going off track for a second,
Sure.
something you just said reminded me of when I was probably about 9 or 10. My adoptive parents decided they were going to foster a child and then ended up having siblings come and stay with us for a little while to meet us, and they were going to foster them. And I was really, it really shook me at the time. I didn't say anything about it. I did not want the children to come to the house. I found it like, I knew they could come and they could be returned. Did that mean I could be returned? That kind of stuff. And as it turned out, we moved and they didn't foster. So I'm just wondering, did that have an impact on you watching those babies come into your home and then leave knowing they were going to be adopted? Like, how did you process that?
I think I was old enough as a teenager, I could appreciate like the gift of adoption
Mm-hmm.
um, from a parent's perspective, because a lot of the times I was sometimes at home when the new parents came over. My mum would like create a big scrapbook over, she'd take lots of pictures over the 6 months or the 3 months, depending on what year it was. I think they changed the guidelines over the years.
Mm.
And so I was able to see what a great gift it was for those parents who really wanted to have children and couldn't, and really, yeah, just like it was just like the pinnacle of one of the highlights of their life. So I was old enough at that stage to understand that
Mm.
um, that significance. And I also thought, yeah, it was probably cathartic for my mum as well. And yeah, I think yeah, it was just like a celebration, I guess. And so
Mm-hmm.
I could see, I guess, see my parents in that situation where they couldn't have children, and there's a special day where they, are able to meet me and my brother and my sister.
Mm.
Um, so kind of, I can't remember those days, so that kind of gave me a visual reality of what it may have been like.
Yeah, thanks, James. Um, so you've knocked on your mother's door. She doesn't know it was you. What happened next?
Yeah, so probably a year or two passed. It was on my mind. I yeah, it was on my mind and like affecting my mental health, obviously, because I'm someone who, once I know I need to do something, it
Mm-hmm.
needs to be done. So, but I wanted to be, because I've got a lot of this information from the department about her up. So, for example, I didn't know about her history. So her history wasn't like all, you know, uh, what I thought it was. So that was something my parents didn't tell me, but her history was, she was adopted. She lived a tough life. She was an immigrant from, Yugoslavia. She came to Australia, and then she was told she was adopted when she was 14 in Melbourne by another Yugoslav person and a friend. And then from there, she kind of disengaged with her parents and was a child of the state until she was 21 back in those days. And then, so from there, she had like a difficult life. And I didn't know any of this. So, and also she's now passed away, but she was, an escort. She had substance abuse problems, but that was all around the time of the Fitzgerald inquiry, where a large amount of people were suffering those kind of consequences or doing those kind of things, whether it was, it was what it was. So, but I didn't know that. So I felt, when I found out that information, I was like, I've dealt with lots of people with in my own daily life and with foster care, with foster children, and with their own kind of challenges. So I was like, I need to be prepared, and I'm not going to like be someone who just walks in and walks out of someone's life. So I needed to like prepare myself emotionally, because once I met her, I was thinking, I'm not going to be someone who just ignores people's phone calls or isn't going to be there for that person. And I know she didn't have anyone really else, if that I knew of. So so I forgot the question, but
It's just what happened next when you went to meet her. Yeah.
So I knew that. So then, about a year and a bit passed, and then I was working a job probably about over a decade ago, and then I didn't get my contract extended, and I was just like, everything was not doing great for me. And I remember I came home from Sydney because I used to visit, because I'd lived there. And then the next day, my contract didn't get extended at my job, and I was in Fortitude Valley, and I'd been to the electoral roll, and she'd changed address, so I had updated it in my phone in my notes section. And then from there, I was like, things can't. I mean, they could have got a lot worse, but at that stage in my mind, I was like, things can't get much worse. I just need to. I felt like this was like something on my back. I needed to get done. So I basically just got a cab to the address that I had in my phone. It was, inner city, Brisbane. And I just basically was like, you're going to do this. You need to do it. I basically got to the address. It was, again, like a apartment kind of complex. So I had to walk up a lot of stairs. And then there was I knocked on the door, and because I guess my birth mom would only know certain things about each other, so I made sure I told her some identifying factors about myself. I said hi. I knocked on the door. She opened. I said hi. My name's this is the name you've given me. This is my date of birth. I'm your son. And then she kind of stood there, and then I think a lot of it is kind of gone from my memory, because it was a bit of a strange and
it's overwhelming. It's an
overwhelming
moment. Yeah.
And she kind of looked at me, and she obviously knew who her sibling, like her relatives were, and what I looked like. And then she was like, yes. And then she invited me in, and I remember we had like maybe 1 or 2 hours of conversation, and she was telling me all about her life, and I was telling her all about my life. And really, I was very lucky that it worked out like that. maybe if I'd caught her on a different day, it wouldn't have been the same reaction.
Mm-hmm.
But she told me that, so we met that day, and then she told me that she, because of her first name was very uncommon, she'd always kept her electoral details up to date because she wanted to make sure if I wanted to find her, I would be able to find her, and that would
Mm-hmm.
be the way I could find her. So I don't know if that's true, but it did work. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was very grateful for that, and also because she was adopted herself,
Mm-hmm.
um, she recognized that she met her adopted parents, and she thought um, I would want to do that at some point. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, certainly if she didn't want to be found, it would have been very easy to take them off, wouldn't it? So,
yes.
and that's, I mean, that's amazing that there's that multi-generational trauma of adoption that goes through the family, and that she leaned on some of her own experience to know what it might be like for you.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So,
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
go
and
on.
she was certainly a very smart person, so
Mm,
and savvy person. So if she didn't want to be found, she certainly would have
yeah,
made it so yeah.
yeah. So, how did things unfold with you guys over the years?
So yeah, initially it was like a hard slog. So we met each other, and it was kind of I knew she had a lot of trauma in her background, along with being adopted. A lot of she went back to Yugoslavia. They had a war. She had to come back to Australia. Also, um, she didn't have a partner. She didn't have any family support really. She kind of cut them off. So she was kind of just by herself. So I understood that, and understood that it would be difficult to build trust, and I understood that it would take a long time, and I would have to do a lot of work to build the trust. So yeah, I understood that, and from there so yeah, initially it was a bit rocky. Um, on my birthday, I think the following year, my mum put all some photographs together with in a scrapbook over however old I was, and I met her in the city, and I gave her that. And yeah, from there, so yeah, the first few years were a little rocky, and then from there, we just maintain contact here and there. I mean, sometimes she'd get really angry and send me some, not nice messages, and I guess maybe I would do the same, but I kind of understood that wasn't really her. It was just her under stress, or something had happened, and she just kind of needed to blow off steam. Yeah, and so from there, I started working in the city, Brisbane City, and from there, I'd moved. She would pick up medication in Fortitude Valley, so I'd moved her on. I said, "You can pick up the medication in Brisbane City. Like it's going to be, there's less people for you to run into," because she knew a lot of people in that area, and so she was able to do that, and she was able to then. She used to sell the Big Issue, and she started selling the Big Issue again. And so I was working in the city, and she was selling the Big Issue in the city. So on my breaks, I would go and see her, check in with her, because she would come into the city in the very morning to pick up her medication. So she was there probably till midday. She liked to pick up her medication, sell the Big Issue, and kind of just, she'd know a lot of people in the city, just check on people, talk to people, and then just go home. So yeah, we had we built a strong relationship around that situation. She was very timid to come to my parents' house or come to someone's location, but I knew that, so, and it was also good for me. We could find a middle ground and have those kind of build that relationship and trust over time, and that worked well for us. And finally, it was really lovely. She passed away a few years ago, but it was really lovely before she passed away. Like I got to meet a lot of her friends, And even when we were walking through the city one time, we were going to get something to eat. One of her friends had stopped her like in the middle of the city, and she said, "Oh, like I know, like is this your son? Like he looks exactly like you." And for me, since I was born, I really didn't know what I was supposed to look like, and I really, like all my relatives had always, and grandparents and things, they would naturally say those kind of things, and I kind of really wanted that for myself. So it was really lovely that like someone who didn't know us could recognize that similarity. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was kind of a nice thing that happened.
I'm so sorry to hear of your mum's passing. But I know that it was important to you that you'd met her before then. And I vaguely remember you telling me a bit of a story about after she passed and what happened. Would you mind sharing with us about that?
Yeah, so I won't go into the gory details. There's no gory details, but I did find, like, I was the last person who found her. Like, I was the person who found her when she passed away from a heart attack. And so I also felt that was like a full circle moment for me. I don't know, in a strange, maybe warped way, that like I'd left her when I was not even born, but then I'd found her at her last known point, I guess, of being alive. So I felt that was like kind of a poetry in motion kind of situation. And yeah, from there, it was a few months before her birthday, and so she was selling the big issue, and so I organized a service, and the church that organizes the big issue, I think it's an Anglican church, or sorry, Uniting Church, in the city, St Andrews Uniting, I think, near Central Station. So I think they basically offered to do the service for free. The organist was, discounted, and I invited all the big issue vendors. And then after this, so a lot of those people attended, and then after the service, they all came down for coffee and tea and biscuits, and it was really lovely. They all got around in a circle, and the lady who ran the big issue at the time, Susie, she said that a lot of them don't really speak a lot about things, but there was a lovely man in here. He went around and asked everyone, what was their greatest memory of my mum Gordana, and they all had something really like touching to say. So yeah, it was really lovely, really genuine, and it just shows you don't really need a lot to make something special.
Yeah, and to touch hearts, obviously she touched a lot of hearts.
Yeah, she had a lot of, and then from there, the lady who ran the big issue, she put a picture in a picture. I asked her to I asked if she could, sorry, put a picture in the next big issue, just like, because they sometimes put things when people pass in the big issue. So they put a little nice blurb, and I had a nice picture with a gentleman had taken, who used to go around Brisbane City, used to take pictures of just things that were happening in Brisbane City, and he had given a picture because he used to talk to my mum every so often, and found that he had nice conversations with her. So he took a lovely picture and he gave that to us, and it was printed in the big issue. And I thought that was a good memorial for her, and the best way I could, as much as I could, do as much as I could for her. And we had the service on her birthday, so that was lovely as well. And it happened to be, I think, a day after Mother's Day. So
yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us. I wonder, did you end up meeting any of your extended family at all through Gordana?
Yeah, so Gordana didn't have any other children. However, what I've found is through National Australia Archives, which is an Australian government free service. Obviously, I looked up her last name, and I found a lot of information about her immigration to Australia, and she also left Australia. and that information is publicly available after 30 years. So, and if it's not published on the website, you can request it to be published. So I did get some information about my grandparents, and I did actually last probably 2 or 3 weeks ago. I went to Melbourne, and there was her address that she'd moved into in Footscray. So I went to the address and took a picture of the house. And aside from that, she didn't really have any other relatives. And then my birth father wasn't listed on on my birth certificate. And through the department, I did request. There was an actual statutory declaration saying that she didn't know who my birth father was, but she thought he was of Australian descent. So I got that information, and from there, I mean, I really just wanted to meet her because all the information I had about anyone was about her.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have you made any steps? Like sometimes there's a lot of steps, years, I should say, a lot of time in between meeting our mothers and our fathers. There certainly was for me, like 20 years. Have you made any steps, or are you tempted to make any steps to search for your father?
Yeah, so I listened to a few podcasts of Adopt Perspective in the last few months, and they kind of inspired me because I've done the my heritage DNA and ancestry DNA. So I used some of that information to really kind of knuckle down and see if I could work out from that information who might be my birth father. And I did get to a situation where, again, I used I think the people on my heritage use the National Australia Archives through the army records to connect all their family tree. And so I kind of worked out who my grandfather was. And then there was a picture of him in the World War One, and basically there's a picture of him, so he looks exactly like me, and that's not something I usually say because I don't really know anyone who looks like me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was fairly confident that slotted into the timeline, but there's not a lot of information about his children. And again, I was during the era of there was a lot of adoption, a lot of secrecy. So I don't know whether my father, was adopted or, what happened with him. And for me, it's just more of a low key thing that I'll just kind of chip away at, but I'm not desperate to find him. But it would be great if I could stumble upon it, if I just keep chipping away at things. But I'm not going to lose any sleep over it.
Yeah, understandable. So you've had some time now to process, I guess. I wonder, when you think about it as a whole, what has that reunion with your mother brought to your life?
I think for me, it's brought a lot of self-confidence. I always felt like I was kind of like the black sheep, like I didn't really fit in anywhere, whether or not that was true. I just felt it. And so, and also some of the, I guess, things that people said were negative about me, like that I'm kind of outspoken or passionate or stick up for people. Sometimes those things aren't highly regarded in different cultures, or depending on what family you're from. But for me, knowing, for example, my mum, she submitted a Fitzgerald inquiry kind of statement, and I was able to get that through the Queensland government. So she stood up for things that she believed in, and I was always thinking, and people that she didn't know, she just tried to do the right thing, and I always try to do that. But so it just kind of gave me some confidence that I'm the way I am because of my genetics and my mom, and that's a good thing. And she did a lot of good in her life, and so I can kind of harness those kind of and also knowing her, kind of harness the good things about her and understand also the things that might have been a detriment to her life, and kind of like be aware of those things, and just keep them on top of mind, and not let them, I guess, be a detriment to my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's been really lovely. And yeah, I just didn't really think. I also didn't. I never understood the relationship between like blood relatives. I didn't understand like this connection. And when I first met my birth mom, we had the same. So the main thing we shared was the same temperament and mannerisms, mainly in all nonverbal. So she would get frustrated as fast as I would get frustrated. So those are the things, yeah, that I found really helpful, for not thinking that I'm some strange black sheep in a just awkward kind of person. So yeah.
That's incredible. And I mean, how courageous was she to put her head up and during that Fitzgerald inquiry and put a submission in? I mean, it was a dangerous time in Queensland's history, very dark time. So that's very courageous act.
Yeah. And yeah, just kind of solidifies things that I've done. Like I've like put my neck on the line for certain things that have nothing to do with me. Or really, I'm walking down the street and something happens, I could just keep walking, but it's just not within my DNA. So that kind of, confirms, but also, yeah, you kind of need to be, also, for example, I don't know if people know that you can, once you're adopted, you can request all your medical information from state hospitals. And a good thing is if you get a letter from your GP saying it's about your hereditary family medical history, that kind of solidifies the application. And there are a lot of similarities between, if they've been to hospital quite a lot, what their experiences are and what age they are and where you are in your life. There can be a lot of similarities and a lot of reflection based on that, because there could be good things that happen or bad things that happen. You kind of the bad things you kind of can kind of look out for and be aware that these things could influence you at that point in your life. So.
Yeah. So I wonder, all of us that are impacted by adoption and have done any exploration of it, we all have different things that we've tried, with support, or just things that we found helpful, whether it's books we've read, study we've done, groups we've been involved with, people we've met. It can be all sorts of things. It can be psychics even. We do some weird things sometimes. I'm wondering, what have you found helpful as you've explored your adoption experience?
For me, like I see a regular health practitioner every 2 weeks. So since I met my birth mum, we just kind of have a debrief, and we discuss about what's happened in the last few weeks, and especially when my birth mother was alive. Those issues were more pertinent, and just kind of working out boundaries and how to navigate things. Because for me, I felt really guilty that my mum had left this, like, in some other people's eyes, not a desirable life. In her eyes, it was fine, a fine life, a great life. But I was always feeling like I needed to fix everything for her. And it was the realization and talking to a health professional that she's happy, she's got this far, she's a tough person. You don't need to do anything more. You just need to be yourself and be there, and that's enough. That was a tough thing for me to kind of understand. And yeah, from there also, I guess, letting my mum and dad know. I'm lucky that my mum and dad are very supportive. They have a very good understanding of, I guess, the adoption system and the child safety system. So they understand these things and they're very supportive. And for me, also just keeping active and obviously looking after my own health and fitness, and looking after my own just well-being in general. If there's something that you can do to look after your well-being, whether that be fitness or meditation or whatever it might be, that's something you should definitely dial into.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I mean, it's a holistic thing, isn't it? Sometimes we're looking for just adoption-specific answers, but it's important to actually just look after our own selves, our health, our physical fitness. All of those things come into play, and it's not a one-stop shop. So that's really wise words, James. So we're just about to wrap up. Is there any thoughts that you'd like to leave us with?
I just want to say, hopefully my story can help some other people who, maybe at crossroads in their journey of the adoption journey, which is lifelong. I think for me, it's taken over 10 years to gather all the information I wanted from my adoption. And so it's not an easy process, and there's certainly not at the moment like a button you can press to get all your information. And I feel like people who are adopted are owed that information. It's their information. It's information about themselves. And you will get hit with a lot of crossroads. I don't think those crossroads and people kind of causing those crossroads are doing it purposely, which is always something I try and keep front of mind. They're just trying to do their job. And they don't understand the sensitivities. So I think it's important not to take those kind of comments or, setbacks personally. But yeah, I would encourage people to get, if they're interested, apply to the department, get their adoption information. You can apply to the hospitals, get your health information. And there's whatever your state archives are, search the name, find any information. It could be legal documents, court rulings. It'll give you some information about that person, your mother or father's history. The same with if they have a national archives, it'll also give that information. And none of this is kind of written down anywhere in a easy to follow menu. So I'll just encourage people to just keep going, but also not to. There are times when you just kind of need a break, and you're not ready to continue to be disappointed. So it's important to take that break, and also then to, when you're feeling better about things, to restart whatever you were pursuing.
Yeah, that's wise words. Knowing when to take your foot off the accelerator is very, very important. Look, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, James. I know a lot of people are going to get a lot out of hearing it, and I'll be putting up any relevant links on our podcast notes page. So again, thank you very much.
No worries, and thank you for having me.
Meanwhile, do you have a story that you'd like to share with us? If you'd like to be interviewed for the podcast, just jump onto the main podcast page of the Jigsaw Queensland website and complete the prospective guest form that you'll find there. And just note that Adopt Perspective can be listened to by people all over the world. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Adopt Perspective podcast. If you'd like to find out more, go to the podcast page on www.jigsawqueensland.com. and you'll find a wealth of information and resources on the website. If you reside in Queensland, you can reach Jigsaw Queensland's Forced Adoption Support Service on toll-free 1800 210313, or you can call Jigsaw on 07 33 58 6666. If you live in another state of Australia, you can still call the Forced Adoption Support Service number, and your call will be answered by the Forced Adoption Support Service in the state that you're calling from. In every other state, Relationships Australia operates this service. A big thank you to Matt Sparrow for composing and recording our original theme music. Until next time, I'm Jo Sparrow saying farewell from Adopt Perspective, a podcast for anyone affected by adoption.